Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to turn NotebookLM into an interactive lead magnet using Google's free platforms. Assuming that you already know how to use NotebookLM and that you have your business philosophy inside of NotebookLM, you can turn that business philosophy into your lead magnet. You can go through this process with Google Opal. However, the customer will need to have the Opal app on their PC in order to use your application because the model is experimental. It's also important to note that if you're using a paid consumer plan like Google One AI, both yours and your customers' actions can be used to train the AI models. We will use Google's AI Studio, which is free to use and free to build and test your ideas. Payment begins when you publish and deploy your application. And once we have all of our documents uploaded to NotebookLM, we're going to go to Gemini. And Gemini has the most recent and the most updated model and the most comprehensive model for us to generate prompts. We could go straight to the chat in NotebookLM and we can initiate our prompt there. However, this will not yield the best result in pulling a synthesis out of NotebookLM. So even though this process is slightly longer, the best results will come by starting with Gemini and asking Gemini to help us to write a prompt to get the synthesis. So right now we're asking Gemini to help us by giving us the prompt to put inside of NotebookLM so that we can get a synthesis document, which we will then use in Google AI Studio in order to create the free application. We're now going to click enter. We now have our extraction prompt. We can now get the synthesis. What we're going to do is we're going to copy it. We're going to head to NotebookLM. We're going to configure our chat. We're going to make sure that what we are doing is generating the right kind of document. We're going to opt to request a longer document. We're going to click save. We will then paste in our prompt. We will then click enter. Now it's a good idea here to tell NotebookLM not to include citations, citation numbers, or citation references. And so we will leave that here in the instructions. We will then click enter. Once a document is completed, we will save it to a note. We will then export the note to Google Docs. We want to come back to the same Gemini conversation. What you will then do is you will then let Gemini know that you have the synthesis document, that you have pulled it. And then you want to explain to Gemini exactly what you want your app to do in plain language. What you'll then want to do is ask for two things. You need the prompt to put in the AI Studio, and then you'll need to know which buttons to add to the interface. Now, Gemini will not always know exactly what you mean when you say buttons. And in terms of buttons, if you go into AI Studio, you'll see that there are buttons that go across the bottom here. And if you want to keep these buttons in a list, this will give Gemini a sense for what it is that you were talking about, because this is what you're going to be adding to the dialog box when you were building with Gemini. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put those buttons and their names in a list. And that will allow Gemini to know exactly what we mean. What we will then do is to click submit. So Gemini should then give you the studio features to add, and it's given us two. It's also given us the prompt that we're going to place in AI Studio. So what we're now going to do is we're going to now take this prompt and we're going to put it into AI Studio. We're going to make sure to add the two studio features into the conversation. When we get inside of AI Studio, we're going to click to add in the drive. And we're going to go to the drive and we're going to get our most recent synthesis document. We're going to insert it. We're then going to add the studio features suggested to us by Gemini. One of them was add Gemini intelligence. And you will see these names will change from time to time. The other one as enable high thinking, going to be the same as think more when needed. So we are going to enable high thinking. So we have our document, we have our two buttons. And so now what we need to do is we need to add in the prompt. And our prompt is now added. We can now click the build button. What you will then see is that the builder will then begin working on your application. And our application is now completed without error. We can interact now with the application as if we are the customer. So we're going to write dialogue as if we are the customer. And in this case, we can click the button to test our application to make sure that when the customer clicks this, that it's actually going to work. And so what you'll see then is that the app will then go through the process. Now, what we're waiting to see is if the app is going to do what we want it to do. And the report is now complete. And so what you'll see here is that the report has taken the information in our NotebookLM notebook and it's synthesized it into a plan for the individual that uses our application. It uses our explicit language, and the app does as we have asked it to do, which was to provide the perspective that we will execute on behalf of the customer. Now we want to add two elements to the application. One, we want to add a call to action, and the other, we want to make it a downloadable PDF. So we'll come back to our Gemini conversation. We're going to let Gemini know that the app worked as it should. So what we want the app to do is we want it to include a call to action, and then we want to then have a report to be a downloadable PDF. And so what we want to do is we want to know from Gemini how can we correct or update the app. Once we have in what we think our corrections are going to be, we will then click submit. So Gemini has now given us a new prompt. We're going to take this prompt and we're going to go to the update section of AI Studio. We are going to add in our prompt for AI Studio. We're then going to click enter. And what we want to determine is if our app can be corrected. So our updated app is now complete. We're going to try the same prompt and we're then going to click generate my implementation plan. And our app delivers the report. It has a call to action based on our correction. And we now have a download button where we can download the report as a PDF. If you want to share now the files with someone in order for them to complete the development process, you can do it, or you can publish and deploy the app yourself. One of the things suggested by Gemini in its last response to us was whether or not we would like a prompt written that adds an email capture field requiring the user to enter their email address before the PDF download unlocks. You can come back to the working version of your application and then remix it. And basically what you're doing is when you use Remix is you are copying your application to a new element. And so if we relaunch this application, what you're going to see is you're going to see another application just like the one that you created. And you can use this part of the application now in order to test new assumptions, such as the one given to us by Gemini. So because Gemini has proposed this to us and we now have a remixed application, we're now going to ask for Gemini to go ahead and fill in the email capture field. So we're going to let Gemini know that we've remixed the application. We now have a second completed version. And we're going to allow Gemini to rewrite the prompt for the remixed version. Gemini is also going to suggest that we add in a webhook integration. And this is a good idea because we do want the lead to actually go someplace. So we're going to say yes. We'll click enter. And so based on the interaction with Gemini, we now have a prompt that will now allow us to collect the names and email addresses, and then we can connect our autoresponder using a CRM using the webhook that we're going to be implementing. So what we're going to do here is we're now going to then grab the entire prompt and we're going to head to AI Studio to the remixed version. Gemini will give us the instructions that we need in order to execute after we have made sure that the new application is running properly. We will go back into AI Studio. We will go into the Build tab. We will find our apps. We will then click on the remix version. And what we want to happen now is for the remix version to then open. What we will now do is we will now enter our updated prompt and we will now click enter. And what we want to happen now is for Gemini to then remake this application, but to add in the additional elements that will allow us to collect the lead. And our app has now been rewritten. Now, one of the things you will notice here is that when we are ready to deploy the application, we will need to change out the webhook URL to our actual webhook. So the webhook URL that's now there is a placeholder until we finalize the application and we are ready to deploy it. However, we can now test the application. We will now click Generate. And so what we now have is the individual is going to submit their name and email address in order to generate the report. The report will then be generated. The individual will then be able to download as a PDF, and the report will be customized based on the information from our NotebookLM notebook and their specific niche and their specific circumstance. So what we have done is we have used the free platform in Google AI Studio to construct an application. We can then share the application with a developer, or we can publish and deploy ourselves. Once the publish process begins, that is when you will then begin to pay for every usage of your application. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video.